the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand and baseball in the summer. Someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer. Baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the Brock v. Mac Legendary Rivals podcast. And there wouldn't be a rivalry if there wasn't a rival to speak to. But truly one of the great guys that I've ever come across, and really probably the character that defines the early days of the McMaster program more than anyone could possibly imagine. The salty son of a gun catcher, Newts. Billy Newton, how are you?
I've been great, buddy. How you been, Mike?
I'm not getting any younger, Newts. I mean,
No.
For some reason, you look exactly the same. I can remember you walking out to talk to me on the mound behind your mask, usually with an F-bomb every second word, because you were the perfect salty catcher. But you look exactly the same. What the hell have you been doing to stay so healthy?
Prosthetics and makeup. A lot of makeup. A lot of whiskey too. Whiskey tends to help.
That kind of runs contrary to what you see of most people who abuse alcohol. I'm just letting you know.
I never said abuse. I just said a little bit here and there. Maybe in the past it was abused a little bit more, but now if I have more than 2 or 3, I'm in a little bit of trouble. So,
well, we'll definitely get into it because you're one of the original gangsters of the McMaster program, and can take us back. And I think for those people who don't know, and that's going to include a whole bunch of people that are currently at Mac and have been there in subsequent generations, because we're now going back 3 generations pretty much, or three 10-year cohorts, as it were.
Well, our kids are in university now, so there you go.
Yeah, that pretty much says it all, eh? And then Lunny's kid plays at Brock. He should be strung up at Mac and flogged for that. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I've known the kid since he could. Dougie and I played years later senior ball, so I've known the kids since they're babies, and he's lucky I love him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we have it's a little bit of a policy that none of our offspring are allowed to go to McMaster. But Bill, why don't you take us back and, before we get caught up with where you are today, because that's a fascinating, I think, story for a lot of people. Before there was a McMaster, tell us about where you grew up and how you started into baseball a little bit.
Well, as you know, Mike, I grew up in Niagara Falls, played in that program all the way up. We had some pretty good teams early on, and then, everybody started working so young in Niagara Falls. We were working 12, 13 years old back then. So priorities shifted. It was tougher to field good teams, but I would say in and around junior, midget junior, we started, multiple age groups, and that's when we were able to start building up some pretty good teams again. And we did have some pretty good junior teams. You and I played together there at some point. Just jog my memory a little bit there.
Well, it's we played on one of the stupidest summer teams I could possibly imagine. So you, myself, Daryl Kemp, and a whole bunch of other guys were pulled together by, if you can remember this, the coach. He shares your first name, and that's as far as I'll
Billy
go
Defoe.
with it.
Billy Defoe.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Well, the issue was, I remember we would load up on a bus on the Canadian side of the border.
Yeah.
And Coach Bill would stop at the duty free and load up with a lot of beer. we would go and play, and then his decision making got a little more suspect as the game went along, and I finally found out why, because when we were driving back, I don't think the coach was sober still, and maybe not the safest thing of all time, Bill.
Well, yeah, we, Billy, God love him. He's still with us, thank God. I know his son still. I saw his son over Christmas. I still get home quite a bit, 4 or 5 times a year. But Billy, to his credit, took a ragtag group of guys and built a pretty good junior team at the time. And I think some of us were aging out, or some of the guys were aging out, so we decided to go play in this Buffalo Muni League. And, having the opportunity, where there was word, Doc was going to play, and, anybody who grew up in Niagara Falls playing baseball, obviously worshipped Doc, and a few of those guys watching them play for the Mariners back in the day, and down at Oaks Park, watching Doc hit moon shots, like, wow, how's this guy not playing in pro baseball somewhere? But, so that was the Buffalo Muni League. It was a good loop. Just to reference it, was a lot of college kids came back for the summer in the States, Buffalo there, Niagara Falls, some ex-pros, and then just a bunch of guys that didn't want to let go. We were one of the younger teams, and that's his buddy Jimmy Morrow ended up coming out and pitching with us a little bit, and Jimmy was the head coach and there's lots of ties. I have a lot of different ties with the Proc program, different people that were involved with Jeff and Mike, and then Jimmy Morrow was the head coach at Niagara at the time, and Mikey McRae was, I believe he was the hitting instructor there. And, fast forward a little bit, that's when Mike left. That's when I filled in for Mike, but I think it was Doc first. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun playing in those leagues. I can remember one trip up to the OBAs. I think we were going to junior up to Sudbury, and yeah, it was just big Billy Defoe had a big van, and we were all sitting in the van. We played that night, and I think we were all 3 seats to the wind playing Friday night by the time we got there. And I think we ended up only losing 1-0 or 2-1. We obviously couldn't hit the ball very well, but we had some pretty good chuckers back then that carried us, I think.
Well, the funny thing is, so did you play in high school, or were you always a catcher? Is this, or how did you end up catching? Like
okay. So that's an interesting story too. So, no, we didn't have high school baseball. We just had, summer ball. My uncle Tom was a professional baseball player. He played in the Braves organization. He made it, I think, as AAA, cup of coffee, couple exhibition games, major league level. His catcher was actually at one point was Joe Torre. So my grandfather had a picture of my uncle and Joe back when they played together that it's somewhere. I'm sure my cousin Tommy or Greg have it, but one Christmas, Uncle Tom, they would come over every Christmas. I'll reference Tommy and Greg. You know who they are, but my cousins are all basketball players down there, and Greg playing at Duke. He, a lot of, he got a lot of press back then. But anyway, Uncle Tom comes over one Christmas, and again, my grandfather and the uncles are into a few pops, and he just said, "Billy, you're catching." He goes, "I got the team next year. I'm coaching you boys." And Greg was a pitcher, and Greg was about probably 6'6", 6'7" at the time, and I think we were 12, 13, and he was probably throwing mid-80s. He's like, "I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to catch them, so you're catching next year." And so that was kind of my I had never caught in my life. I was believe it or not, I pitched a little bit, and I think more third base, first base type stuff, but that was my first foray into catching, and obviously scared shitless to block a ball. I'm like, but you figure it out. I'm like, I'm jump first 2 years, I'm going like this, and it took some time. It was a work in progress, and probably never got to where I wanted to get to, but that's how I ended up catching. I want to say it was early Bantam, maybe Bantam, major Bantam in there. And then once I started, I never looked back. I love it. I think, part of it was I was probably the slowest runner in the planet. So, it was a perfect spot for me. I wasn't tracking down very much either to my right or left, or certainly not in the outfield. So it was a perfect spot. I mean, most guys could run backwards faster than I could run forward. So it was a good spot for me. So that's how I ended up catching.
Wow, you seem like such a natural for it. I talk often about catchers because I probably had 20 of them I threw into, maybe even more than that, 30 of them in my career. And you have to have a personality to be a catcher because you got to manage these divas on the mound all the time. And,
Yeah.
it's, you seem quite natural at it. So,
Yeah. It was a
what,
lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, you get
yeah,
to be involved in so much of the game, like as you know, and pitching as well. And I think there's a reason why most managers either are pitchers or catchers, right? You're pretty involved in the game and in every aspect of the game. So it was a blast. I had a blast, Mike. I can't imagine playing any other position now.
that's cool. What brought you to McMaster? What was behind that decision? And was it your first choice, or were you looking at going elsewhere? What led you there?
Well, strangely enough, high school I played football and on top of baseball and hockey, and I fell in love with football. And I originally I went to Mac. I was recruited to play. I was supposed to be part of that football program, and about a week before training camp opened, the coach at the time was a guy by the name of Al Bruno, and I was a defensive lineman slash linebacker in high school, and referencing back to my speed, I think I would have. I thought at the time I would have been a bit of a practice dummy. I certainly wouldn't have had the speed to play linebacker at the university level, and I wasn't interested in hitting any of the juice or putting on 40, 50 pounds of play on the line and down there. And we'd had a good we were playing in Buffalo in the summer and playing against a lot of these college guys, and I'd had a if I remember correctly, I had a pretty good year at the plate, and hitting wise, and I thought, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna spend a year work out, because back then, obviously, as you know, we didn't have baseball in Canada,
Yeah,
or certainly not in Ontario. I think there was NBI. I think NBI at the time was the only option for Canada, if I can remember correctly. But I think I went in. I called him up about a week before camp, and before I was able to finish telling him I wasn't coming, he basically hung up on me. So I didn't have a residence. All of a sudden, I
nice.
had to find a place to stay. I didn't have a residence. So yeah, the plan was I was going to spend the year working out, and maybe look for a JUCO or something like that down in the States. I mean, I was full of shit out of my mind back then. I didn't have a clue what was going on, but that was kind of the thought process back then. I'm going to focus on trying. We played against a lot of these American kids, and I'm like, we can play down there. So let's just anyway. So long story short, I ended up running into. That's how I ended up at Mac, and then next step was running into Gwendon, and the rest is history. So
Yeah, so I know for sure that I think anyone that's kind of out of the range of the history of the Mac program, they should know about Jason Gwendon and that story. Can you open that up a little bit? Because I'm sure that I was shocked when I
yeah,
discovered a lot of this. So
yeah. Okay, so basically what happened was, from my standpoint, I was stumbling home from the pub one night, and I had a girlfriend who lived in residence on campus, and somehow or another, I ended up shooting the shit with Gwendon at about 2 o'clock in the morning. You can imagine the state we were in, and the lies and the stories you must have been telling then. But yeah, it came out we were baseball players, and he's like, well, I'm thinking about starting a baseball program, and I'm like, great, man, yeah, I'm in, count me in, I'll help you out however and Jay did a ton. You can't underestimate and underscore how much Jay did and how responsible he is for the MAC program. He is. He is the guy that's responsible for it. So he started it. Year one, some dumpster references will come in. So we ended up. I think we ended up practicing a little bit. That year, and he's like, I got an exhibition game lined up with Durham College, and I have no idea where he got all these players, and whether how he advertised or where we found them or whatnot. The mind's a little foggy from those years at times, Mike. But anyway, we ended up fucking. I guess we left the bar one Saturday night, went home, probably grabbed 3-4 hours of sleep, and woke up early. And a bunch of guys jumped in some cars, and I think we drove to. I want to say Guelph area for a ball game. I'm not sure why it was Guelph. I could be 100% wrong there. I just remember it was cold. And we one of the guys must have had too good of a night at the bar. He didn't show up, so we ended up playing with 8 players. We had 8 players there, and Durham College comes rolling in on their bus, and they got a team full of guys with parkas, and they're all, they got matching everything, and we've got matching nothing, and half of us are probably still at $1.20 or whatever. But so we decided, playing with 8, we were going to play without a third baseman. And sure as shit, the first guy comes up and he lays down, this is my first introduction to Dempster. And sure as shit, the guy lays a bunt down the third baseline. So, the way I was back then. And I'm just like, you fucker. So, you remember this fucking signal that came next. And the second guy gets plunked pretty good. And, I words passed back and forth. And just didn't get off to a great start with those Durham College guys. And anyway, I think they ended up beating us, not by much, but it was fun. And I think we practiced a little bit in the gym. We got some gym time. It was club. Obviously there. It had to be a club status. And Jay, I remember Jay went for a meeting with guys on the administration or whoever was involved in athletics, and they basically laughed at him. They're like, "There's no way you're going to get a baseball team off the ground." You know the types, but anyway, he stuck with it. And the plan was to go year 2, which would have been, I guess, 93-ish. So I think my first year would have been 92. 92, and then 93, we were trying to get something off the ground, and it didn't. And then 94, which would have been my third year, junior year, Jay organized with Guelph, Durham, and McGill. Right? Yeah, so it was a 4-team CIBA, Canadian Intercollegiate Baseball Association, as you know, and we had a schedule. And again, it was like the Bad News Bears meets Major League guys meets the Bull Durham guys. Like it was. I don't know where he found all the players. I'm sure I knew back then. I can't remember. But he, to his credit, he found some guys that could really play the game. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool, man. Like, we had a kid, Jay Brooks, our center fielder. He'd been drafted a couple times majors already. Early guys, Joey Davis, Trevor Lawson, Stevie McGrail's our second baseman. So we had a pretty good team, and somehow, and we had a blast, man. It was. I think we had to pay for our own jerseys at the time, all of our own uniforms. I don't think we did any fundraising. It was just like, yeah, we got to pay for these unis. Okay, no problem. Because we were only a club program, we weren't allowed to use maroon and silver, whatever it is, maroon and gray. So our first year, I still got the jersey upstairs somewhere. It was blue. We were blue and gray. And
says McMaster, like blue and gray, for the record.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get to the semifinals, and I can't remember how we all ranked place-wise. But anyway, we had Durham in the semifinals, and that was our big crack to get back at these guys, and we beat them. And then we ended up losing to McGill in the finals. And it was a tight game, but it was it was a blast, buddy. You look back on those years, and you're like, wow. Can't believe we pulled it off, and it was a lot of fun, man. It made some lifelong buddies that I still talk to this day. So
yeah. So did that rivalry with Durham? I'm sure those bad feelings carried over for years. Just every time you would see Coach Dempster come walking on the field the way that he kind of does, and some of the players, I know some of the players that were there because I played with them in Oshawa. Not subtle. They're kind of carry themselves a bit with some swagger. So I'm sure that you guys despise Durham all the way through.
Well, we only played them, I guess it would have been the 1 year. I think after that, Mike, maybe you would help me out on this, but our last year, so our 4th year, when we actually had the first year that you guys came into the league, I don't think, was Durham part of that group?
Yeah, they were.
Oh, they were? Okay.
I took great delight in personally beating Durham a few times just because it was fun.
Okay.
Because I had lots of old teammates who were playing there, but Sam in particular, could be difficult on the field. He would do something like a bunt when you have no baseman, which, he didn't coach a lot in Oshawa rep ball because of, there was a kind of an attitude in Oshawa about winning the right way, and Sam was a just win kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really organized and all that stuff. But man, yeah, he could rub you the wrong way sometimes. And
well, you know what? I never met the man personally.
Yeah.
I don't harbor any resentment. It was, I look back, it was funny. And, our buddy, your best friend, we'll obviously talk a lot about him, but Reese, I think, I always heard Gwendon talking about this recent kid, and we got to get him out. He's got to play on this team. And he didn't play our first year. I think he was at the school, but for whatever reason, I think years later we found out that Dempster didn't want Reese playing because he was worried about him getting hurt at Mac or something. And I could be 100% off on that, but I think it was pretty close to something like that. Reese didn't play his first year because, and we certainly could have used Reese, as you can imagine. Well, who couldn't? But yeah, I do remember something like Sam didn't want him playing, and whatever. It's all under the bridge. But yeah, I don't know Sam. I've never met Sam. I take my hat off to anybody who volunteers the time that he obviously did over the years. So I'm not no ill will to him. It was just funny, just very funny.
You just love beating people like that. Like that's just baseball.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, I know that we were like that with Brock. I mean, everyone had this, I would say it was maybe accelerated when Jeff Lounsbury was coaching, but there was just kind of this at a certain point, because McRae kind of put us in a certain way right away. I think people wanted to beat us a lot. And, So tell me what eventually happens with Jason Gwendon and because this is a real driver for Mac getting out of those blue uniforms a little bit.
Right. So Jay obviously graduated after that, after our inaugural season. And it kind of fell onto, myself and Shane Toohey kind of took over the reins a little bit. And we knew that if we were going to be taken seriously, we had to bring in a coach, not me, or you didn't need a Reg Dunlop or in the baseball world coaching. But so we knew we needed a coaching staff, and we put some advertisements in the spec and local papers, and interviewed a few guys for the job, and two of the guys that applied. There was probably 6 or 7 people that applied, and we drew up a list of questions. Tell me a situation where you'd hit and run, blah blah blah, just so we knew we weren't getting, what count would you send somebody, blah blah blah. So he probably thought we were fucking crazy. Who are these fucking university kids sitting there sipping on a beer asking me questions about baseball? But anyway,
I think Donnie Graves said to me once that you guys interviewed him and he had to sit on a bunch of beer cases.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because that was probably our furniture at the time. But yeah. Anyway, Donnie came into Bates, where we were living at the time, and it was apartment style housing, and it was a fucking madhouse. It was it was only for senior, second year and above, and apartment, and everybody wanted to live in this apartment building. Somehow we were fortunate enough to get in, but my cousin Jay ended up being the hall steward, or whatever you fucking call those guys. So we were able to stay 2 years. So yeah, Donnie must have looked at us like, who are these guys? Henry Romanowski was another guy, just an absolute fucking beauty. Came in and applied, and just stories coming out of this guy. He used to yell at me all the fucking time, "You should be beating the fucking runner down fucking the line after he hits that fucking ball." I'm like, Henry, have you fucking seen me run? I'm not fucking beating, I couldn't beat a fucking 10-year-old down the line. Anyway, but so we ended up, we hired Donnie on as our head coach. Great decision. One of the best decisions we ever made. And we didn't have a lot of decisions to make back then, but it was a great decision. Donnie was fantastic. And Henry joined the staff as well. So, Henry was comic relief all the time. And, to Donnie's credit, from day one, he took it very seriously. And that would have been my last year playing. Senior year, we had Reese was out, and Lonnie and these guys, and Coops, and I remember Toronto having a pretty good team back then. I think we lost Toronto. I don't know that it was you guys that knocked us out, but I remember your team was fantastic right from the get-go. And obviously Mike's another local guy, all baseball guys in Niagara, kind of, you certainly know the older guys. He wouldn't have known me probably back then, but I was a young guy coming up. But I knew Doc, and I knew Doc was a part of the staff, and And Mike, and you certainly had the best coaching you could find down there. You're not going to find anybody that knew the game more than Daryl Kemp and Mike McRae. So and obviously, Jeff got on board early. I don't know if he was in there the first year, but I think he was. I ended up getting to know Jeff because I was a summer student at Customs of all. Like, it's such a small world, man. Like, Jeff was a customs officer, and I got a summer job as a summer student. So we would drink all summer with the full time people, and that's how I got to know Jeff and played some hockey together. Blah blah blah. But a lot of shit talking back and forth. Obviously, me being the young fucking cocky Niagara Falls kid, and all these guys are Niagara Falls boys, and running the Brock program, and you guys were great from day one. And so I could talk for ages about the fun, how amazing those two teams were, and the amount of skill on both sides, and just how much intense and how fun those games were back in 96, 97, 98, 99. Like, it was some of the best baseball. It was just, anyway, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it, but yeah. So I don't know how I went off on that tangent, but that's kind of, yeah.
I'm going to reel you back in right here.
Yeah. Okay.
Jason Gwindon. So what happened to Jay after he graduated, I think, is important for people to understand why there's such a heart beating in the MAC program.
Yeah. So once we, Jay, we kept in touch. He kept ties for a year or two. He knew we'd hired Donnie, and Jay went on a summertime trip. He said it was his, bucket list as a kid. Wanted to see all the ballparks in the United States, and I think he got through, about 2/3 of them, and he was tragically killed in a automobile accident. I want to say Texas. I could be off on that. But obviously word got back to us, and it was crushing, like, I can't underscore enough, like, baseball doesn't exist, maybe even at the university level, certainly not at this level now, if it wasn't for a guy like Jake Wyndon. And it would not have existed at MAC. That, I think, a few years later, MAC ordered him with, a friend of, I can't remember specifically the name of the, MAC's not great at honoring their, their ex-players or people like that. But I do believe that, he was, posthumous Friends of Distinction or something like that. It was, and I don't know who nominated him. It might have been one of us or Donnie, or I can't remember. But yeah, Jay was killed, and obviously it was pretty sad to hear that when that happened.
These things kind of tend to motivate programs, and you guys went on to, you won a national championship before we did, obviously, and that was greatly driven by Brad Reeson, who it's come up in the Brock podcast. It's hilarious. So we're going to play at McMaster in that first year, and it was freezing cold. You guys, it was like super effing cold. So, Coach McRae, it was one time I played the diva card in my life. I'm like, this is too cold. I don't want to play in this shit. But you got to watch Reeson. Like, he's really good. And I gave him a little scouting report on you and said, you got to watch the middle of their order. But, Lounsbury came up to me and said, Reeson doesn't look like much. He's just like a tall, kind of skinny kid. Doesn't really look like much. And I can remember like smirking because he went and had the same conversation with Peters and that same conversation with Larry and Daryl Houston, who were all on the team from Oshawa. And we all kind of said, you don't, like, this is not something you want to play with. So we had this big right-handed guy named Ron Strow who threw the ball pretty hard as a Hamilton boy. And I think Reese's first at bat, it didn't go over more than 10 feet off the ground. It was one of those patented right center line drive shots that hit the fence on the fly. And it was just on a line.
I saw a few of those over the years.
So after the game, I think we played a doubleheader, and I think he went 5 for 6. Only our closer got him out. And I don't really know why our closer was in the game. But, and Lounsbury came and kind of said, I guess we'll have to keep his number in mind. And, like that was so Brad's style, right? Like he was, I used to call him the silent assassin because he was the same way in a lot of things in life, right? He would be quiet and then all of a sudden he'd have a zinger, or he would do something that was incredibly funny. But he would be quiet and then he would be devastating. And
Yeah.
what was it like having Brad as a teammate? Because, I know what it's like, obviously, but at Mac, he was that on a little bit of like the gas. He was even more recentish at
Yeah.
Mac.
You can't encapsulate him in a few words. I mean, he, he was like a little brother to me from day one. And I had the pleasure of being his teammate and and end up coaching him. And he was the same. I mean, he's the same in both realms. Like he didn't treat you anything. Like he was probably, as you know, Mike, he's, there isn't a nicer person on the planet, more humble. Just very even keel all the time. Never saw him too high, never saw him low. Just silent intensity. Clearly, I think what doesn't get said enough about him, other than how good he was how clutch he was. I don't think anybody would argue. There's a lot of egos on those teams, and I don't think anybody would argue at the end of the day, Reese was an MVP. He brought everything, and he was so calm, and things were getting fired up. He would calm things down. He would levity, they had come out to the mound sometimes, and he's just kind of make you laugh, say something stupid to fucking make you laugh, and I'm like, but he was everything. I mean, defensively, he was, we had two guys, Dougie Lunny, whoever's had the privilege of playing with Dougie, you're watching him play. Like, you're not going to find two guys with better hands. And in the year that we ended up winning it, just kind of talk about like Reese was our everyday second baseman. Dougie was a second baseman too, obviously shortstop, blah, 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 but mostly second. All the senior stuff he played second, as did Reese, but you couldn't touch Reese. Like he was just that good. Had times been different and baseball is the way it is now, there's no doubt in my mind Reese would have been playing on mid-level D1 team somewhere higher. That's just how good he was. And you would never, yeah, exactly. I remember the first time looking at him like, how's this guy? When it's talking about him for 2 years, this guy comes out, he weighs about $160, and but that's how good Reese was. He never mind at any point he dropped one over the fence or hit one off a wall. He was so clutch. And I'm sure you guys remember some of the stuff. Your memory's better than mine, buddy. But back then, but he'd hit you bomb. He'd pitch, 450 or whatever he'd hit you, right? And flawless in the field.
Yeah. The things
But the kind of teammate everybody needs, because there's so guys are full of piss and vinegar, egos, blah blah blah. He was always so steady, and that's what I remember most about him. How steady he was, how humble, super humble, and maybe one of the best players I ever played with. Truthfully, I played with some. I can't say he's the best player. I played with some guys that play pro and Team Canada stuff. Like I can't say but as far as a teammate at Mac, he's with two or three guys,
Yeah, I think the thing that people don't understand is how hard he worked at it. His dad used to throw him 100 pitches every night.
Yeah.
And there'd be days where Brad didn't want to do it, or he'd be tired, and he just went and put in the time. And he always used to talk to me about putting in the time. And that part was always, he was a big lover of routine. I don't think people understand that he was kind of, I used to bug him a little bit later in life about, I'd say to him, life is like a box of chocolates, because you remind me a bit of Forrest Gump and Rain Man kind of mixed together there, Reese. Because he would do some strange things. Like he used to save money. People don't know this, but he would save his money in envelopes that he would tape to his wall as opposed to putting it in the bank at times, because he just wanted that, every week I've got to put, I don't know, I would say to him, what if someone breaks into your house and steals your envelopes, Reese? Like,
Yeah.
this kind of, maybe I'll get you a mattress like some old Italian lady. And he would just kind of smile at me, but he liked that. He had that routine, and
Yeah.
routine was very important in his life. Um, Maybe you want to touch on a
I
few
got a
other.
funny story about that. The first time
Yeah.
I'm in Oshawa, and obviously I ended up marrying a gal from Whitby, and so that we met at school, and first time I go to his house, we're all primed up to go hit the bars, whatever. Well, Reese has got to do his fucking 100 push-ups, every fucking day. This
I
guy
know.
would drop 100 push-ups, and I'm like, Reese, I've already had 4 or 5 beers on my way over here. Let's go. No, I got to do these. And you meet Roger and his mom and sweetest lady, and I didn't realize Roger was as intense as he was until I got to know him a little bit better.
Pretty intense.
Yeah, I'm like, Reese, really, you're gonna drop 100 push-ups, right? Yeah, I got to do my 100 push-ups. So I'm like, all right, man. Fuck, where's your whiskey? I gotta have a whiskey. How's that? But yeah, he was definitely a routine guy, and we'll talk more about that after. But yeah,
Yeah, well, that just reminds me so much of when I would go to visit him at his cottage. Okay, so Brad, after graduating, retired from baseball really quick. He only played till he was 26 because
yeah,
he bought this cottage up in Halliburton.
yeah.
Well, the problem is when you would come to visit, you'd be there for like 2 minutes, and I was there with my kids who were both young at the time. He'd be like, Mike, it's time for us to go swimming. I'm like, swimming? He's like, yeah, we'll go across the lake and back. Oh, God, really? I really just want a beer, and it's sunny on the deck, but fine, I'll go swimming, right? So I would swim with him, and he would just take his time, and I'd be like so impatient, so I'd fire off and swim back, and I'd be sitting on the deck, and I'd be like, oh, I need a beer because I'm at a cottage and it's sunny out. And he would just merrily come strolling back up, and then about a half hour after that, he'd be like, Mike, I think it's time for us to go for a run. What? This is like, it'll be only 5 kilometers. You'll love it. I'm like, I don't think I'll love it, but all right, fine. So I do the run with him, and Brad wouldn't go very fast, but he would do the 5K, and then we'd come back and we'd
I
be,
can still see him doing that
yeah,
little Johnny
yeah,
guy. Oh
and
yeah,
you could see that. And
yeah.
so, like an hour after that, he'd be like, Mike, it's time to go for a bike ride. And at that point, I'd always draw the line. I'm like, screw the bike ride. I didn't come here to do a triathlon, Reese. Let's have some beer and just enjoy. But he was very process driven. So, I always used to joke, he'd invite me up to the cottage, and I'd be like, to do what? Are you really going to put me through the paces yet again with all this stuff?
Yeah.
And it's just because he was like that. So that's what made him a great player, is because he liked routine, and his hand-eye coordination was out of this world.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about some of the other players that were on that early Mac team that ended up winning, and some of the characters that you remember specifically.
Well, the year that we won, I don't remember. Truthfully, I don't remember a lot about my last year playing. I know Dougie and Lonnie and Reese were there, and Craig Coop, who ended up becoming, Scoop, and he had a torn hamstring all year, so we didn't, we knew he was this Team Nova Scotia guy, and but I mean, he can't hit with a torn hammy. But anyway, so the year that I was finished, so I guess we go into 97-ish. I was coaching. We had an unbelievable rookie class. Somehow we just had, 6 or 7 absolute studs show up at the school on top of what was already there. We felt, I can't remember what happened in 96, but did you guys win it that year? Or?
We won it the year after you guys, so we won 98.
So I'm not sure who won 96. I do remember losing.
Dalhousie. It was Dalhousie
Yeah,
that won it,
okay.
and they had that pro pitcher that mowed everybody down at Nationals.
Right. But you guys went to Nationals that year, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the year that we won at 97 was, we had, a kid by the name of Scotty Hughes, who, was, play anywhere in the diamond, pitcher. He was, our infield was so strong that this kid who was a stud, we ended up moving him to first base as a freshman. And then we had 2 freshman catchers that were both excellent. We ended up in the finals. One of them played out in the outfield, and the other one caught. But to have a freshman catcher on a team like that is something. That's a tough position, as you know, and it's not everybody that can do that. But we had 2 of them, and we had a kid show up by the name of Scotty Ralph. He ended up being our shortstop, and we're like, "Who is this guy?" And Henry Romanowski was like, "We'll find out how good he is," and he must have hit him 200 balls one day, and Scotty made every play. And we're like, "Whoa," because normally it was Dougie, Lunny, shortstop, Reese second, which, who the fuck wouldn't want that? It'd be a middle infield on a fucking D1 team somewhere. But because Dougie was also our ace, we wanted an everyday combination up the middle. So Scotty Ralph became our everyday shortstop. Reese was our everyday second baseman. And when Dougie wasn't pitching, he played third. And then we had Scotty Hughes at first. Yeah. So, top notch. You guys had awesome teams too. Don't give me wrong. Your guys better than I do. But, and then our Coop was completely healthy up the middle out center field. And if you remember Coop, he'd hit balls, 450 feet, and he could run faster than anybody on the field. He was just that guy. And then, we had, I think, a rookie on one of the corners, and, who knows? I can't remember exactly. But we probably had a rotation of about 14 guys that moved in and out. Some guys played every day. Some guys never saw the field. Typical as any program was. But Coop had a year that year. It was just like, oh, wow, this is what he's all about. I don't know. He must have hit 470 or something, and could go, and I don't know, a dozen bombs or whatever. And then Reese was Reese, and then Dougie, I want to say Dougie, I can't remember who led off for us. I think Dougie hit second, Reese hit third, Coops hit fourth. Robbie Pino, who's another name you'll hear a lot of. Robbie was an original teammate of mine, Dr. Rob, and ended up becoming our closer. So he would have played some outfield. He would have closed for us. Could have been. I'm sure he was an infielder when he first got to Mac. I think he was a year behind me. He's one of the first guys that I ever played with at Mac. And because he did his doctorate program there, he became a doctor at Mac. He stayed, and I think he played fucking 14 years or something, whatever it is. But Pino was a closer. So we had some kids come in. Husey would pitch, Dougie. A couple kids we called the co-captains, but great guys, but all rookie kids. And like I said, I don't know how much recruiting Donnie did over the summer, or whether it was just by fluke. All these guys showed up, but Brett Gibson and Adam. We had Brad Arms was there. We had an unbelievable rotation, and the challenge was just getting people enough innings, because of the way our schedules were set up, and that really became the challenge. Is how do you get people into the lineup when you've got so many fucking studs, right? And I can't imagine cracking that infield and even fucking catching. I can't even imagine cracking that dish, but
it's super hard. That's like the hardest thing, is because the backbiting starts from inside, right? When people aren't happy and they think that they should be playing. And we had the luxury of at Brock being have an American schedule too, so it allowed us to get more innings and more at bats for people. But
sorry, I got my dog barking at me. I don't know.
It's amazing how a dog says "Go Badgers," like that. So, like the interesting part here is there's a lot of new teams popping up. Western, Waterloo. From what I remember, we added York. When we were running the team, we put that first Skydome game across, and you guys played U of T there. But really, it's still the same as it ever was. I think in CIBA, it was McMaster and Brock and U of T fighting it out all the time. did you have any special feelings when you guys saw, you're either going to St. Catharines or they're coming to Burnie Arbor, about playing Brock every time? They're pretty intense. It probably stood out still, eh?
Well, you guys were loaded. You're built the same, very similar to. I mean, you had Ricky Bottomley, center fielder, if I remember correctly,
Mhm.
who just ran everything down. Tinish, who was just another guy. Like, how are you not playing pro ball somewhere? Your staff. I remember you guys had a really deep staff. You had a great middle. Your catcher was really good. Built very similar to us. Super competitive, on a personal level, because I had so many. I'm a Niagara Falls boy. I had so many ties with that Brock program, and yeah, it got intense, man. Like it was, I you know, it was honestly, and you know how good the baseball was. It was probably the most exciting baseball that you could play, or be a
Yeah.
part of back then. You're playing at university level, and these kids, talent on both teams was, like I said, the year I went down to Niagara after the '97 year, I ended up coaching. I took Mike's spot as a hitting instructor at Niagara with Jimmy there, and I remember playing a lot of these teams and thinking Mac and Brock would both easily. It was the MAC conference, so it was a
Yeah.
D1 conference. And I learned that didn't mean a lot. D1, we did our spring trip down in Florida, and we were playing JUCO teams, D3 teams, and they kicked our ass. So it didn't really. I used to think that the D1 schools were just better than the D2s and D3s and so on and so forth, but that's not the case at all.
No.
And both Mac and Brock would have been easily mid pack in that MAC conference. Um, that's how good the ball was.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of money to go down to the States back then and play ball. And there's no money. I mean, I think I want to say Niagara, we had 14 full scholarships, and we had to divvy them up between, 40 guys. I think our roster at Niagara was 35 to 40 guys. So I think two guys had full rides, but nobody was getting full rides back then. So it was a lot of money to go play. So having baseball as an option in Canada was amazing for a lot of kids and guys like us coming up. And yeah, it was super intense and super competitive. And again, we're all competitive guys. And I knew Jeff well, and we used to fucking chirp each other
Oh.
back and forth back in the day. I don't know. Briggs Jude was on your roster, and I remember I played a regional team. He was a coach there, and I knew a few of you guys. I didn't know you as well, but obviously it gets really competitive, and yeah, I used to love going into St. Catharines. Playing. I only got to play you guys the 1 year, but I do remember a bunch of guys having to do some wind sprints after one of our games. Just
It's
like every,
pretty pretty typical for us.
yeah, for every hit you get, they got to do 10 wind sprints or something like that. So I remember laughing, fucking you watching you guys do wind sprints after the game. But those teams were amazing,
Yeah.
Mike. Like Toronto was good right off the hop as well. But there was no other rivalry like Mac and Brock. They were the two best programs, two best teams. I'm sure some of these other teams caught up. Lumley used to coach that Western team, so you could see good things were going to happen there at some point, and he had some good players, but they couldn't. At the end of the day, the Waterloo guys, the Laurier guys, they couldn't compete with those two
Yeah.
teams back then.
Those guys came along later. Like
Yeah.
it's, so we'll pivot a little bit. Tell me
Okay.
about meeting your wife on, at Mac. I think that's such a cool story, and you guys have such a great family, because we'll talk a little bit of our daughters playing hockey and being on the same defense pair here shortly. But tell me about meeting your wife and kind of, you owe a lot to Mac, I think, because she clearly classes up your partnership. Let me tell you.
Oh, no question. No, there's no question about that. Yeah, nobody would disagree with you on that front, Mike. We were living in that Bates. I was kind of dating a gal at the time, and we were busy with the spring stuff, or once we got not spring, sorry, when we got back to school, so we'd go down a week early and we do camp and blah blah blah. So they were having the floor crawls, and she was on our floor with and my cousin was the floor guy or whatever. So you see these girls, Purple Jesus parties or whatever, but we were busy that week in camp, and I didn't, they got to know them a little bit. So, I got to know her. I tried picking her up at the bar one night or something, and she's like, "You got a girlfriend?" I'm like, "Okay, well," and this is when one of the fucking crazy stories. So I'll break up with her, so I did, and then she called me an asshole and left, and blah blah blah. A couple weeks later, we ended up getting together. But anyway, we met at. She was playing rugby at the time. Lisa was a multi-sport, kid too. She'd gone to Mac, trying to decide whether she was going to play basketball or rugby, and really it came down to. She also played volleyball and whatnot, but it really came down to the season, the length of the season. Anybody who's ever played basketball, it's a pretty challenging season, certainly at the university level. So I think she chose a shorter season, and she's always had a passion for rugby and loves rugby and coached it for years. And so, yeah, she was playing rugby. I was playing ball. We hooked up drunk one night at a bar, and the rest is kind of history. So, yeah, we lived on the same floor, and then she was 2 years behind me. So, when I finished playing, I was still coaching and joined the staff. So I used to joke Van Wilder and Mac. I think I stayed there 8 years or something like that. I stayed there a couple of years with her after. Then she went to Queens with Reese. They went to teachers college together, and I think I still stayed in Hamilton, and I go visit them on weekends, and yeah. So that's kind of how I met Lisa. And obviously, yeah, here we are 25 years later, whatever, a couple kids, and she's running a very successful prep program. She's at a school called Crestwood Preparatory, and they started, I want to say about a decade, 8-9 years ago now, they started this elite basketball program. And they brought in, there was a kid by the name of Elijah Fisher, who at the time was, they start rating these kids in basketball in like grade 7 or 8. It's fucking insane. But he was up there. It was always him or the Bronny kid, the Bron James kid, and blah, blah, blah. So, but the female program evolved as well. Now the women's program, the girls program, the seniors are one of the top teams in North America. I've heard somewhere they got rated number 1 in North America just recently. They just easily won the Toronto area, but they went down and played in the ESPN tournament a couple weeks ago, month ago, and 2 teams in the top 5 in the States. They just fucking smashed. So she's the athletic director. Well, she's vice principal and athletic director of Crestwood. She started a hockey program a couple years after the basketball program started. Both my kids are hockey players, so it worked out well. We were able to get both of our kids in there to play hockey, and so they were able to get private school education and blah, blah, blah. So it's worked out really good in that respect, so.
So, I think talking about your kids, it's really interesting. The easy part, I think, is to be pretty laid back as a hockey parent, right? Like I found that we were more the laid back hockey parents compared to some of the ones who hadn't played sports before, because they would go bananas on officials and referees and the rest.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we would just kind of sit there and, our daughters, in an ironic small world, were defense partners on a team that won the national championship.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about what it's been like being a hockey dad.
Well, I've spent hockey was another sport that I played a lot of. So I'm just going to charge my phone up here, pal. Hockey was a sport that I played a lot of growing up. It was either baseball or hockey. Obviously I wasn't the hockey player. Baseball I was a little bit better in baseball than I was in hockey, so I focused on the baseball a little bit more. But I always loved hockey. Just couldn't skate very fast. I skated like I ran, but I played rep at a really early age, and then too heavy to skate fast and then cut and blah blah blah. Ended up playing a little bit of higher level stuff as I got older, but then I just shifted gears to baseball. But so I mean, my last 15 years of my life I've spent in rings. It's funny you talk about the. I think what the Bill you saw me with the girls was completely different with the boy. I was on his bench. I'll stick with her for a bit, but she obviously is the oldest. I coached her early on, house league, and then a little bit. I found out that I couldn't coach the girl. I couldn't coach her the way I would coach him. Girls take things. Not every girl, so I'm not trying to generalize here, but I find the girls take things a lot more personally. And you can say some things to the boys that you can't say to the girls. And nothing offside, but just, challenging them and, what are you doing? Like, blah, blah, blah. So I found out pretty early that I was just going to be a spectator with Ella. And Lisa took on that, and Lisa jumped on, and she's way better than I am with her, certainly. And she jumped on as the trainer. So she was always with Ella. And I coached JD, a trainer, coach with JD, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I was really laid back. I was never had any kind of conflicts with any coaches. I'm not a guy who really, with the girls ever yelled at the refs. I got a couple penalties on the boys' side yelling at the refs, but you know what? She was a Whippy kid all the way up, and then Lisa was on the bench every year. Like, we were diehard Whippy, and then in that last year, it's some decision. I'm not going to get into this, but anyway, we jumped ship over to Durham, and yeah, Ella and your daughter ended up being defense partners on that team, and honestly, it was the best decision. And looking back, they ended up winning everything, and having the opportunity to play for an SO Cup and winning the SO Cup and getting to watch your daughter on TSN, the national championship game, and being broadcast. It was fucking unbelievable. So, the best thing we ever did was put her into hockey. She was a little bit resistant at first. She started off doing the dancing and blah, blah, blah. And when she realized everybody was going to watch her brother play hockey, she wanted to play hockey. So, she loved it. It was great for her. Her bucket list is she wanted to play junior. So the year after winning the SO, she ended up playing on the Whippy team was pretty strong. So she had, didn't get the offer. And it's different with the girls. We didn't really go pushing for it. And you really got to go out and sell your daughter to these coaches. It's kind of different from the boys' side of the house, as you know. We didn't do a lot of that. We just kind of felt the coaches would come to us, but we didn't, it didn't happen. So anyway, she ended up playing her one junior year in league side. And, it wasn't a very strong team, but she played big minutes there. And she just decided, that was it. The girls were moving on to the university, and she applied. We took her to Mac, and she wasn't interested in Mac. And, it came down to Western and Queens. And as soon as she saw Queens, it was like, nothing else exists, and, she got Queens was the last school to let you know. So we weren't sure whether she was going to get in or not. But she had good grades, but you just never know. It's so competitive there. And she ended up getting in. And once she was on campus, and a member of the staff did reach out to her old coach in Durham, actually, on that Durham West team, reached out to him if Ella would be interested in coming out and playing, or trying out for that Queens team. And she just, she made the decision. She was just done. She just wanted to focus on school and social, and they were the COVID kids, and they missed out on a ton of that social stuff. And so, we tried to talk her into playing, but, at the end of the day, we let her make the decision. And, she's at peace with it. She's playing intramurals, and we said, look, if you don't want to play, that's fine. Skate, do some intramural stuff. And if you change your mind and you want to play next year in summer development, we'll get you back. Don't worry about that. You can play hockey. You don't play at the levels that you played at, and all of a sudden forget how to play. So, she checked all her boxes as far as what she wanted to do, made a lot of great people along the way. And it was the best thing that she ever did. She's a hockey player through and through. She wants to do sports medicine or sports rehab or whatever she wants to do. She's trying to get involved with the sports teams there. And I think her life will be in sports in some degree, whether it's, medicine or blah, blah, blah. That's Lisa and I. That's really all we know. We don't know anything else. Both of us play different university, sports, but that's kind of sports. Our family is just sports, and that's kind of all we've ever done, and that's all the kids did, and that's all they know. So I did, spend. He stayed in Whitby his whole way. He was always in AAA, and then there's all once we started hitting Bantam and whatnot, U16, U15, whatever it is now, but he started getting opportunities and offers to go play different spots. But he stuck it out in Whitby, and it was probably the best thing he ever did. When it came to his draft, he ended up going 26th to Barrie. So he was a high second round pick, and he's going through his rookie season now, and there's a lot of ups and downs with that. And you go from being the guy or one of the guys to bottom of the barrel, and it's just like now you got to earn your stripes. And it's the first time he's probably ever faced any kind of adversity in that respect. So it's been a challenging year. He's been in and out of the lineup, but he's played 30, 35, 36, 37 games, and it's been a good. He's done well. The feedback's been good, but he's scratched tonight, so they're up in Peterborough and Ice. So he's pissed off about that, obviously. But it's at the end of the day, you're going to figure out what kind of young athlete you have and how bad they want it. And there's no days off. And I think from all of our experience with coaching and whatnot, is you learn that you can't take anything for granted, and the second you stop working, you're done. Like it's that competitive. Like the days of somebody strapping on the skates and going out and being the best player on the ice, those days are long gone. Like it's all, it's development, it's power skating, it's working at your skill your game every day, and the sacrifices you got to make, and commitment, and the hard work and discipline, all that stuff, everything that we learned along the way. They're not just cliches, because we're seeing it firsthand with the kids right now. It's a challenge for them every day, and they've told us year one's about surviving, and we've spent the whole year just kind of managing his head and making sure he's good. And we brought him home some weekends just so he can get a refresh and come home and see his buddies and his girlfriend and whatnot. And it's been good. He's handled it really well. Proud of him. And I think hopefully the next couple of years will be he'll play, obviously, hopefully play a little, be a regular and go from there. Barrie is a team that doesn't really believe in a complete rebuild. They kind of rebuild on the go, so they want to be good all the time, and they have a coach who's never missed the playoffs, and they've got an owner who wants that playoff money, and it is what it is. So they're leaning on their vets, and that's understandable. And like I said, it's good. It's adversity. It's not everything in life is easy, and not everything's fair, and these are the lessons you learn, right? So
It's
so yeah,
hard.
that's kind of our background, our family, my my family history. I come, my cousins were big basketball players down there, and everybody knows Greg. Greg played at Duke for 4 years under Kay, and Grant Hill and those guys, and that was fucking nuts. That was a period that I could tell you a million stories from there. But yeah, I mean, athletics has just always been that's all we know. We don't know anything else.
So Billy, what have you been up to? Like, I think your teammates and probably some of the folks you've coached and kind of half know your path, but it's been pretty interesting, and you can probably, you have to be your own, your own monitor here, because you can go as far with that as you want, or as least far with that as you want. But why don't you tell people what you've been up to?
Well, when I first graduated, I was coaching and selling insurance, right? So I actually worked with Kemper at London Life for a couple of years. And, it wasn't my cup of coffee. I figured out and the thing is with coaching, obviously it was a passion, something, am I going to follow, try to do what Mike's doing? But, there's a lot of sacrifice, it would have meant going down to the States and probably finding a full-time job during, all night, and then coaching during the day for no money, right? Like even when I was at Niagara, like there was no money. It's, they paid for your spring training trip and gave you a tracksuit or whatever it was, right? But so as much as I would have loved to have stayed, coaching in that, I went into policing. I found, and not for probably your normal reasons. I found after being out of school, I really missed the locker room environment. I grew up, all I did was sports. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything else. I'm still the type of guy, if I walk into a room and somebody doesn't chirp me within about 30 seconds, I'm uncomfortable. I'm used to people making fun of me, blah, 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 and giving it back. And I really missed that. And the more I heard about policing, and, as I said, I worked at Customs for a couple summers, and those were the Ray years. So when we came out of high school, nobody was hiring cops. They weren't hiring cops. I never even thought. We used to run from the cops, right? The more I heard about it, I'm just like, yeah, I'm the camaraderie, the team, yeah, you get to take out the bad guys. I've always hated fucking bad guys, idiots. You know what I mean? So give you an opportunity to slap cuffs on them. You know, do what you got to do with these guys. And so it just checked a lot of boxes for me. So I went into policing. You know, in York Region, I didn't even really know what York Region. I didn't apply in Niagara. Knew too many people in Niagara. Niagara's
Yeah.
a different town, as you know. It's a border town, and there's a lot of gray in Niagara, and I just didn't think it'd be a good fit for me down there. I might come from a very well known family down there. I didn't want to apply to Niagara, so I
Yeah.
applied to a place called York Region and a couple others, and I'd never even heard of York Region. I mean, I obviously knew Markham and Richmond Hill, but I didn't know anything about the region. Blah blah blah. But anyway, it worked out really good. You know, it's a obviously sits north of Toronto. It's a lot of money there. Um, so great gear, great reputation, blah, blah, blah. So I became a York Regional Police Officer. I started out in Vaughan. I did 3-4 years on the road there. And then, I was driving past 2 police stations, on my way to work every day in Vaughan. We were living in Whitby. So I shifted over to Markham. And then in Markham, I ended up doing another year so of uniform. And then we went into Eau Close. And doing like property crime, B&Es, and stolen cars and street level robberies and all that. And I did that I loved it so much. And we had, a lot of the guys I worked with were guys I played hockey with. We had a really good police hockey team that, we used to travel all over the place and met a lot of great guys, a lot of ex-pros, a lot of ex-junior guys were on my team. And so we had a fucking blast. We had a good time. We definitely burned the candle at every end back then. And if we weren't working, we were in court or we were out having a good time, family time, blah, blah, blah. So did that for about 10 years. I got promoted in there. They left me in there. So I supervised in there for about 5 years. And then I moved into intelligence. And intelligence work is obviously organized crime and blah, blah, blah. We've got a big organized crime element. And in York Region, a lot of the top people really on the planet are living in York Region now because the way our laws are, money laundering laws, so on and so forth. We've got a lot of big shot callers here. So it was very interesting. Did the mafia for 3-4 years, and then had an opportunity to go work. I did a lot of project work, so I ended up down in Toronto for the year. Ended up working with on that project that became the Rob Ford investigation, or where all that stuff came out about Ford. And I was in the wire room at the time, and you're hearing all this, and you're like, holy fuck, right? But anyway. Group of people came in the next day and they had this big meeting, and then all of a sudden everything with Ford got directed to them, and we just stayed on point
course.
with who we were investigating at the time. And that was interesting. Just came back from Toronto, just did a lot of project work. We were having a lot of issues with B&E, so started B&E task force and did that for a while. And then I ended up working with Solicitor General, the Attorney General. It was a secondment for 3 years. So it was all the major projects. They don't like us to talk about that organization, but I was part of that organization that kind of, I didn't want to say too much about that side of the house, but I had a blast there, and I was field intelligence coordinator of the province there, so a lot of the information was coming through, and so that's how but I did that for 3 years, and then when I came, what's that?
You could write a pretty damn good book, but you'd just be under a pseudonym, I think.
Yeah. So when I came back from that, I decided to put in. I got about 5 years left, so I'd never put in for the staff sergeant, so I put in for staff, and just it's going to help with the pension. And meant going back to uniform, so I was a little bit nervous because I'd been on a uniform for almost 20 years, and I'll tell you, I love it. I got the promotion, and then they sent me. I'm working in Richmond Hill as a staff, and got a platoon, and having a blast. It's all the young people, and everything you hear about these days about young people being lazy and not wanting to work. I don't see that. The young people that I have working for me are awesome, and hardworking kids, and all kinds of different backgrounds, and everybody gets along great. And it's a good team environment. It's the reason why I joined policing in the first place. and I'm getting that again. And you can do a little bit of mentoring at this stage, and just making my job is to make sure that these kids get where they want to get to. It's a long career, and keeping them safe and keeping them protected, and avoiding this and avoiding that, and so they're not making the same stupid mistakes we made, or hopefully they're not making the same stupid mistakes we made back then. But we had the benefit of not having cameras and stuff like that, and things have to change, and it is what it is. Cameras are good for us; they protect us, they keep us. There's a lot of people that come in and lie about shit, and when you can show them the video and basically say you're lying, get the fuck out of here. So it's been good. It's been good. I got 5 years left. We instantly became empty nesters this year. I went to school. JD's up in Barrie, and we weren't sure how that was going to play out. It was just Lisa and I staring at each other all the time. But one of the benefits of being in shift work is, and I just got off nights this morning. We don't get stuck in a routine. And I think had we gone from, all of a sudden we're empty nesters, and now all of a sudden it's just us all the time, every night, every day. But I think, who knows? But it's worked out good. We realize we still like each other and love each other, and still have fun with each other, and blah, blah, blah. And when we see the kids, it's different now, Mike. We got the FaceTime, pull this guy out here, and, can't have this. But I'm like, so I don't know. I guess the biggest lesson that we learned, you play at these levels, you just understand the kind of work that it takes, and you can't take anything for granted. Every day's a new day. You work hard, you're gonna have success, but don't cheat yourself. If you cheat yourself, you're not fooling me. You're not fooling Lisa. If you're not going to put the work in, you're just not going to play at the next level. Like I said earlier, the days of just waking up and being that best player, they're gone. I don't care what sport. Baseball, look the way baseball's evolved, look the way basketball's evolved. It's all year-round stuff now, right? Imagine we had the opportunities to be able to play that much baseball, and all the developments and all the skills and blah blah blah. And, we truly were the generation that picked up our gloves in June or whatever, and May, June, and then put them away in September. So you imagine the the levels some of these guys could, the Reeses of the world, the Coops, the Tinnish's body. Imagine how far some of these guys could have gone had baseball been what it was, now.
I think there was some benefit to playing multiple sports because you learned different.
Yeah.
You learn to be more creative in it, and
Yeah.
I think those things are, But you're talking about educator brings us kind of full circle to Brad Reeson. So I'm going to tell a little Brad story here that most people don't know. So Brad, after he graduated from McMaster, becomes a teacher and eventually settles at Dunbarton High School in Pickering. And I used to talk to him about the commute because I used to have to commute in from Oshawa to Toronto, and I would have to leave at like 5:30 in the morning because the amount of traffic in Toronto is getting to Toronto, specifically from the east side of Toronto, is ridiculous. So I'd say, I was on the road by 5:30, and Brad would say, yeah, me too. And I would say to him, why the hell are you doing that? You only have to go to Pickering, for crying out loud. You can probably drive north on, Taunton Road and get over there in about, 40 minutes. You'd say, well, Mike, here's the thing. We have these kind of disadvantaged youth at the school who, if I'm not there to open up the weight room for them at 7:00, they're going to be doing something gang related. So I go in early every day so that they're not. And I open up the gym for them so they've got a place to go as opposed to doing something bad. That kind of attitude is, it was not asked of. The school didn't ask him to do it. He just did it because he felt it was the right thing to do. And he took that initiative for years doing that. And, that's the same kind of gesture that made Brad a real winner in life.
Yeah.
And, a big reason we're doing a lot of this stuff is we had the guy at Brock who lost his eyesight, Todd Nye, in his right eye in the first year after getting hit by a ball on the baseball field. And Todd is a principal and an incredible educator. And anyone who gets a chance to look at that podcast that's up on this channel But Todd is going to be inspired because he is one of the real winners in life just with what he's done and overcome. But Brad was cut out of that exact same cloth. And we lost Brad about 7 years ago now to colon cancer. And, you know, it hit everybody really hard. Brad is the healthiest guy I know. He monitored his diet from his early 20s. And, again, this is a big driver in the McMaster program. There is a memorial scholarship named after Brad that Roger and Brad had done in the wake of Brad's death. Cast a large shadow over that MAC program. That's a standard that everyone needs to live up to, both in life and on the field. What do you remember most about Brad after McMaster?
We would, obviously we live close. We would get together 3-4 times a year. We'd have people over, whatever, come on over. We were so busy with our kids at the time, Mike, and I was still, I was working crazy hours, and whenever I was home, we were at the rink, or we were at lacrosse, or we were at soccer. Like you said, we exposed our kids to everything, so there was no downtime. There was no off seasons. So we'd see each other, like I said, 3-4 times a year. We'd have a couple of beers, whatever. But he was one of the 4 or 5 guys that we kept in touch with. And I should say that I look at your guys and your program, and maybe it has to do with Jeff being there as long as he was. And you guys it seems like you got a lot better of a network of ex-players and alumni system. And truthfully, Mac doesn't really do any of that for us. If we want to get together, I mean, a couple of years ago they put our team, that '97 team, into their Hall of Fame, which was nice, and they brought us all in, and it was the first time in 20 years or whatever that we all saw each other. And I think I don't know how tight you guys all are, how often you guys still see each other. I know you guys got the Hall of Fame stuff and your own Hall. I just think that it was. I guess I wish Mac would have done a little more to get the guys together a little bit more often. I was fortunate that I did still get to keep in touch with Reese, but again, he was only one of the 4 or 5 guys that we kept in touch with, and it was the same every time you see him. It was the same. How are you, man? It's I'd hear whoever, I know he was dating a gal at the end, and I know when he was working, he was working. I know how committed he was coaching baseball, coaching hockey, and dude, it's the older you get, you realize, there's not a lot of people like Brad Reese out there. We lost a great one.
I'll say this. I spent a night with Brad about 3 months before he passed away. I stayed overnight. It was just him and I, and we stayed up for 8-9 hours talking away, which is a long conversation to have with anyone. So I'm pretty sure we were general managers of the Blue Jays that night, a whole bunch of stuff. But I asked him eventually, how could someone as healthy as he and as strong and active as he is and monitors his diet, how could he end up with cancer? And, Newts, he turned to me and he said, Mike, it's stress and anxiety. That's what caused my cancer. Is what people didn't know all the way along was underneath. I was battling stress and a feeling of worry and those kinds of things. So, it's a lesson, I think, for all of us that life is way too short to let it drag you down like an anchor. And, even when Brad passes prematurely from this earth, which it certainly was, he's still teaching us a little lesson with that little twinkle in his eye and, probably just telling us to, sometimes back up the truck a bit and smell the roses a little bit, because it's easy to get caught in the grind sometimes and get a little dragged down. And I'm noticing this with my ex-teammates. I know that we beat ourselves up because we don't always stay in touch with our teammates from 30 years ago. But the reality is sometimes we just need the time, in this case, 30 years, to become empty nesters for our kids to go off to university. And that gives us the time to kind of rediscover some of these folks. And that's why people reconnect.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask you the greatest question ever, because this is likely to come up. Your ex-teammates and some Brock guys and me get to take you to a bar. What are your top 3 things that you would order at a bar?
Wow. That is, I've started, it's so hard to keep the weight, as you know, or maybe you don't know, but once you kind of hit your late 40s, it gets really difficult to keep the weight off. So you really have to be careful with what you're consuming. I've kind of shifted gears from beer, whiskey. I had a couple whiskey nights over the last summer, and I've realized I can't do it anymore. So what I've really taken to is tequila, not pounding it, but sipping it. And my buddies, I went up to Sudbury to watch my kid play up in Sudbury. We did a little road trip with some of my hockey buddies from work, and we get to the bar, and I'm like, yeah, 4 tequilas to sip. And fuck, you should have heard them light me up. What do you mean you're sipping tequila? I'm like, yeah, man, you got to get a good tequila and put a lemon in it and some ice or lime and just ask for a double and sip it. And you can't pound it because it's tequila. Yeah. I mean, you can, but it's not going to go well for you at this point. So I probably would be straight tequila. Maybe a Ryan water. St. Patty's Day, I'm going to get a Guinness into me for sure. Yeah. There's a little pub here in Whitby. I've found as I've gotten a little bit older. It's called the Down Patrick, and I don't know if you've ever been there or if you're a Guinness guy, but it's probably the best Guinness in Durham region because it's constantly flowing, and you can 100% taste the difference between a good Guinness and something that's sat around for a couple of days. And they only charge $5.50 a pint. So it's a little hole in the wall. If you happen to drive past it, it's just off Highway 2 there. You might find me in there. I took my wife in there the other night, and she's like, "What the fuck is this place?" I'm like, "Yeah." Tequila is probably number 1 and 2, and then either a Ryan water or a Guinness, I would say.
Amazing. Well, that is a good way to end this because I think that you're going to have a lineup of people wanting to buy you a drink. And
I don't know about that.
Bill Newton, thank you so much for your time today. And
Mike, let me stop you there. Thanks for doing this, and I'm sure your teammates, come somebody who's, I know how much time you volunteered and how important that program is to you guys, and seems like and I've been there, feel if I wasn't reaching out to people, if I but people are busy, as you said, and I can tell you that I guarantee all your teammates really appreciate what you're doing and love you for it. And you obviously I've played with you, so I know what kind of teammate you are, and I know what kind of friend you are. And Therese and whatnot, and, we've crossed paths a bunch of times over the years, which is awesome. So thank you very much. Thanks for everything that you're doing with this. As much as we were competitors back in the day and we hated each other back in the day on the field, I think the world of all you guys and all the Brock guys, and there's some of the best memories at all, certainly in baseball, that I have. So thank you, and it's absolutely my pleasure to listen, and thank you for listening to my bullshit stories for the last couple hours and asking the questions. And
I will say, Newts, you will hold the record for F-bombs in a podcast, which would be great.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that.
No, it's all good. And, I think I'm looking forward to diving into the McMaster side of the story because it is a mirror reflection of the Brock side, which I'm very familiar with. And at the end of the day, when the people that were attempting to kind of memorialize or shine a little light on are 2 educators like Brad Reeson and Todd Nye. That's easy. I'll get up out of bed at 5:30 every day for that. And I think the other thing is, knowing that you're still in prime shape, damn it, it inspires me that I got to probably drop about 35 to be able to hit a minute.
Notice I'm only head up. I'm only showing you from the head up, That's all.
I got to be able to hit a catcher from 60 feet 6 inches. I don't know whether last time I could do it, but you don't want to go out there and start lobbing in banana balls at this point. I'm not ready to become Frank Tanana at this point in my life. So, look, we'll get caught up down the road. I look forward to more of the Mac side of the story here. And we'll see you soon to sip some tequila, my friend.
All the best, my man. Take care.
Well, the smell